All right, what's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Cody here, and I wanted to welcome on very special guest, Dustin Adams. Man, it's been a long time. I don't know. It's been a while since we've had you on the show, man. How are you doing? We just saw each other at camp yesterday, so hope you're doing well and didn't get too sunburned, although I think the weather's been pretty nice for us recently.
Yeah, so we got to be inside yesterday, so no sunburn this time. But yeah, I think the last time I was on with you, I mean, it's been a minute. I think the last time I was on an episode of your guys' show was the Carson Wentz announcement after the trade. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. Well, glad to have you back on, man. And hey, preseason action coming up tomorrow. Really excited to see some actual football where the Colts are going to play another team and not each other. So looking forward to that. And with that, Dustin, just wanted to kind of look at some players who are kind of the guys we would say are the guys on the bubble, right? The fringe guys that we'd say are competing for roster spots right now, are going to have an opportunity here in preseason game number 1 to really prove their worth with the Colts and kind of earn their way onto the final 53 man. And so we have a good amount of guys here we want to talk about today and highlight. But there's definitely a lot of good, I think, position battles going on in camp so far. And, whether it's due to guys being injured, whether it's due to just guys competing, whatever it is, there's a number of guys that we feel like have a good chance to make a good impression here and really need to have a strong impression to, be part of that 53-man roster. So with the first guy we got to talk about, I mean, I think it's just a guy when I talked about injuries, it's a guy that I think is going to have a great opportunity with some of those injuries, and that's Evan Hull, the running back the Colts drafted here in round 6 of this year. And Dustin, he's a guy that's well known for his prowess in the receiving game, but he's shown a little bit more, I think, in camp from what we've seen in terms of being able to run through the tackles and be more of a all-around running back. What have you seen from him, and kind of what do you expect his role to be here in preseason game number 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it there. When he was drafted, I think he was one of the more proven pass catchers out of the backfield in the entire running back class this past year. I think where he is really impressed, though, through camp is Jonathan Taylor obviously hasn't practiced throughout training camp, is on the PUP, and then all that's going on with his situation. Evan Hull actually was getting some run with the ones even before Zach Moss went down. So that was very telling to me, first and foremost, that they were getting this rookie touches early on with the first team. Obviously, unfortunately, Zach Moss ends up breaking his arm, and even more opportunity grows. So since then, it's been Evan Hull has had the majority of the first team snaps. Deion Jackson, when he's been healthy, has had some first team snaps. But going into Saturday, Deion Jackson's most likely not going to be out there either. So it's going to be the Evan Hull show with the first team. So it's at the point that you don't normally feel this comfortable with a day 3 pick for sure being on the roster, but it would take a lot at this point for me not to have him in my 53-man projection.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you mentioned, Deion Jackson now, obviously Zach Moss with the broken forearm. So there's an opportunity here for Evan Hull to really prove. And I felt like even if he was kind of that third running back, if all the other guys were practicing, I felt like he still had a really good shot at the final 53 man. And it's a great chance to cement himself, regardless of what happens with Taylor and Moss and all that, and with Kenyon Drake as well, who they obviously signed a couple days ago. So yeah, Evan Hull, certainly a guy that has a great chance here. Here's another guy, and I don't know, Dustin, if he's going to play because he wasn't practicing yesterday, but due to the fact that the tight end room is decimated with injuries right now, Andrew Ogletree has a great opportunity coming off of a year where he was lighting it up in training camp before that major injury last year. He has a great chance here to kind of maybe start having the conversation, like, does he deserve a roster spot?
Yeah, I mean, the tight end room as a whole, it's an interesting one. It's a crapshoot to try to predict who makes this roster. First of all, being that they have 1,000 guys in the room right now. Secondly, being just how close a lot of these skill sets are. With the new coaching staff, you never know what's going to happen, how many tight ends are going to be kept. I mean, I've been penciling down 4, but with as many guys that they have in the room, as many guys that they have had injured, I mean, they're getting a chance to look at all of them. And you don't usually get to say that when you have 11 guys out there suiting up for you at tight end. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But Drew Ogletree has been he's picked up where he left off last year. Obviously, unfortunately, had the injury after having a really strong camp last year after being selected on day 3 of the draft by the Colts. And he's had a lot of runs with the ones. He had runs with the ones before Jelani Woods even got hurt even. So I think the Colts like him a lot. They like his combo of size and speed. And yeah, we'll see if he's able to suit up tomorrow. But I'm starting to get to the point where I think the 3 guys that I feel the most comfortable with having a spot on this roster at tight end are Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, and then Drew Ogletree's in that 3 spot for me.
Yeah, for sure. So he'll get a lot of run if the Colts do deem that he's ready to go in Buffalo. We'll see on that one, but that's the one I'm not 100% sure if he's going to play or not. But if he does, he has a great chance, definitely. Here's another guy, Dustin. This guy is like the preseason legend on this roster for the Colts. Mike Strawn seems like every year he comes in, he has a couple nice days where you're just like, wow, you see why the Colts took a flyer on him in the 7th round. But then he kind of just has, then he just kind of disappears, and you don't really understand like what happened, to Mike Strawn. But we've already seen him through camp, having a couple good days of practice. And he's a guy that has an opportunity here, but that's different in the fact that number one, it's a new coaching staff, new offensive staff, and number two, this wide receiver room is a lot more competitive than maybe it's been in the last couple of years. What are your thoughts on Mike Strawn and what he needs to prove here?
Yeah, I mean, first when you said preseason, God for the team, like Sam Ellinger came to mind. I was like, man, me and Cody are about to have some deep quarterback 3 conversations. But yeah, I mean, year in, year out, Michael Strong has been a huge training camp riser. And this year means the most for him with the new, like you said, new coaching staff coming in, new offensive staff coming in. Will the Colts keep 5, 6, 7 receivers? Who knows? There's so many questions there, and you start to go down the room, and you have a good. Unlike tight end, where I said you have no idea how many guaranteed spots there are, at receiver, there's a certain you feel a little more comfortable saying that Pittman's going to be here. Alec Pierce is going to be here. Josh Downs, they just took in the 3rd round. And that's a pretty high pick. He's going to be here. Isaiah McKenzie's been running a lot with the ones as a kick or punt returner. He's going to be here. And then Ashton Doolin is probably the team's best gunner. So that's 5 spots at receiver that you feel dang near want to say the word lock on, right? So then you're like, are they keeping 6 receivers? Or are they keeping 7? Because if they're only keeping 6, that's one job that's open for all of these guys competing in camp. And if you would have asked me before training camp, I would not have penciled in Michael Strawn as that number 6 guy, just because of his inexperience on special teams, the new coaching staff. Just felt like he was going to be an odd man out. But through training camp, of those guys who've stepped up and have just looked to be taking that job, Michael Strawn has looked like the guy in camp that is the front runner for that receiver 6 job for right now. So it'll be exciting to see what happens on Saturday and how much run he gets.
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, that's crazy how many guys you have proven in there. I mean, he's going to be competing with guys like Brashad Perriman, former 1st-round pick. They signed Amari Rodgers like last week. So there are some guys that are seriously going to have to compete for that wide receiver 6 position, like you mentioned. So definitely one I'll be watching. And Mike Strawn's just a guy that it's now or never for Mike Strawn, I think, for this Colts roster to make it. And
For sure.
if he can put it together, then, I mean, that's a great option at number 6 if he can put it together. But we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely one we're going to be watching. Another guy here, and I didn't initially have him on here, Destin, but when I was able to talk with Chris Ballard yesterday, this was a guy that he pointed out was Eric Johnson. The 5th-round pick last year of the Colts, played defensive line, was more of that reserve guy, but he came from a smaller school, and Ballard said he feels like, with those smaller school guys, it usually takes him about a year to kind of feel a little bit more comfortable. And he feels like Eric Johnson's a guy that's ready to take a leap in year number 2. And he's going to have some competition. Obviously, the Colts signed Taven Bryan in the offseason. They have a couple other guys, which another guy we'll talk about here in a second. But Eric Johnson's certainly a guy that's going to have to compete and earn his way onto this roster this year.
Yeah, so with Eric, it's going to come down to how many interior guys they want to keep. Is it 4? Is it 5? Because I think Eric is in direct competition for that backup nose tackle spot. I think that's where, when Grover Stewart comes off, that's when you would expect that Eric Johnson would go on the field, right? So looking at that is where it's going to be interesting, because then you're not competing with a Taven Bryan, for example, because Taven Bryan's going to come on the field for pass rush opportunity. If DeForest isn't out there, that's where Taven's going to take the spot, right? So for Eric, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how many guys they decide to keep, because I know they really like 80, rookie out of Northwestern for the fourth round pick there. And I think he has some fluctuability where he can be anywhere in that 3 tech, 5 tech. You kind of move around the line, be a lot of different things. So it'll be interesting to see what they prioritize there, because I do think of the guys on the roster right now that just are the best rotational piece to be behind Grover Stewart at that nose tackle spot. I think it's Eric Johnson right now.
Mm, yeah, for sure. He has a great chance. We'll see. He's going to be competing with guys like McTelvin Agim, who a guy initially I didn't know about was just drafted in the third round a few years ago by the Denver Broncos. So certainly some talent there. And I know he was a guy that had a little bit of a scare yesterday, but he seemed to be good. I don't know a lot. I'm going to be honest. I don't know a lot about this guy, but it seems like he's definitely gotten some hype the last couple of weeks. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is obviously DeForest has been hurt, right? So he's not been
Mhm,
practicing, he's been present, but that opens up snaps in camp. Whenever starters go
mhm,
down for even minimal reasons, more snaps are available. And it's been interesting to me because McTelvin has been the guy that they kind of just plugged in with the starters for the most part in DeForest's role. Former third round pick with the Broncos, like you said, never was able to really crack a consistent role in Denver. So he's on his second team now with the Colts. I mean, your guys' show bring the juice. So not trying to make a little awful pun. I am a dad now, so I guess I'm allowed to make puns.
Yes,
But
sir.
I think overall, like, he just brings juice on the line, man. Like, you just see
Mhm.
so much energy from that guy, and he's a guy that multiple teammates have mentioned when I've been able to speak with them about how, like, who is standing out to you guys through camp that maybe you weren't thinking about a lot as you guys entered training camp. And like, this guy's impressing people with his combo of strength and speed. And like I said, with Eric being a guy that's going to be the rotational piece behind Grover, so he's not having to compete with the Taven Bryans, the McTelvin Algins. But McTelvin is in competition with Taven Bryan. It seems like to be that primary rotational piece behind DeForest. So we're going to kind of see, how, like I said earlier, do they keep 4? Do they keep 5? Because if they keep 5 interior guys, I feel pretty good about who that 5 are going to be. But if they go to 4, this gets tough. It gets
Yeah.
tough to decide who that odd man out is.
Yeah, like what is the role if that happens? Like for out of Tommywa, like where is he at on this defensive line? There's a lot of different questions with this. So
Exactly.
yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. That'll be
Let's
one
hope
for
they keep
sure.
5.
What?
Let's hope they
Yeah,
keep
let's hope.
5.
I think they will. I mean, you have to,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of
No,
talent in this defensive line room, but if they keep 4, that's when, like you said, things will get interesting, and we'll see what happens. But another guy that kind of came out of nowhere a little bit that we weren't expecting, Segun Ulumi. Hopefully, I said that right. I probably butchered it, but anyway, undrafted free agent last year has kind of come in and has made a big impression from what we've seen. He's made some big hits, and seems like he's been impressing some people in that Colts organization so far.
yeah, I mean, Segun plays with an intensity in training camp that you love to see when we've just been having these withdrawals of football. Segun is making training camp feel like real football. He's bringing it maybe to the dismay a little bit of some offensive players at times, thinking he's bringing it a little bit too much. But he's really taken notice of a lot of his teammates, man. A lot of different defensive players, when they're asked in press conferences that we've been able to be a part of, and they're asked to just kind of talk about guys that have stood out to them, like, almost constantly Segun's name is getting brought up. And he's a guy that they're very excited to see play in the preseason. He plays super fast, plays super hard. I'm really interested to kind of see what his role looks like. He's been getting a lot of starting snaps when they've rotated guys in and out. If Shaq has had to take a snap off or here or there. And on the initial depth chart, he's listed as one of the primary backups on 2 different spots. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what his role is in preseason. But a guy that works that hard and plays that fast, like, I'm a football nerd, so I love watching special teams. I know people get mad at me when I talk about special teams too much, but I'm excited to kind of see Segun get out there and just run on that and just see if he can even
Yeah.
earn a role in that world, because he's definitely a guy that was not on my radar before camp, but he just keeps putting himself back on my radar.
Mm. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see him for sure. I've heard all the hype around him. It's like, let's see what happens when he's out there, get some game reps for sure. I have two more guys, Dustin. I want to highlight today. Two guys that were drafted by the Colts this year, and I think due to just the fact that Darrell Baker has taken the leap, he has. Dallas Flowers has kind of been that number two corner. Two guys that I want to highlight: Darius Rush and Jalen Jones. They have to prove something. I think they've been out with injuries. They've come back and they've shown some things in camp, but I mean, roster spot's not guaranteed for them. Dustin, we would think that they would compete for one, but they got to prove something here.
Yeah, I mean that corner room is the like I said about the tight end room earlier. This is the tight end room of the defense for the Colts. Just very, very tough to try to predict who these roster spots go to. I mean, if you would have asked me before camp, Darrell Baker Jr. wouldn't even have been mentioned. He's now at the top of the cornerback depth chart for the Colts after how he's played so far through camp. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, anything can happen here. And I was a big Darius Rush guy through the draft process. If anyone followed me on Twitter, I was basically begging the Colts to draft him since round 3 on. And they ended up getting him in round 5. But I think the thing with Rush is he is such a good complement to what I believe they want Julius Brents to be on one side, where Brents is going to be he's going to be the guy that shuts down defenders a little bit more, isn't going to be as much of a ball hawking type corner. But then Darius Rush is a guy who's ball skills on the opposite side of that. Like, I just think the upside of that duo would be incredible. And we'll see kind of how that all works out. He's been dealing with a few injuries here and there, so he's been on and off the field in camp, and you never want to be off the field too much as a day 3 pick through training camp because you never know who's going to earn a spot, like Darrell Baker Jr., who is all but a lock to make the Colts roster now, and that's just
Yeah.
one less spot for these guys. So, and then Jalen Jones, I think when you're looking at how the corner room is built right now, and like I said, with what the Colts want Julius Brents to be on one side, Jalen Jones has such a similar game to Brents that they probably would love for Brents, when Brents has to come off for a breather, you have a guy like Jalen Jones who has that same skill set that you can just plug in. And so Jalen Jones of these reserve guys is the best guy to fit that role specifically. So you would love for him to be able to earn a spot through camp, and we'll see what happens. And he's had some good days where coverage wise, he makes plays on the ball and he disrupts offensive players at the line of scrimmage. Really aggressive guy at the line. If you like those guys, they're going to play hard in press coverage. Jalen Jones is one of your guys. And I mean, Jalen Jones is a former top high school recruit coming out of high school. So this is a guy who's been around football and played at a high level for a while. So personally, if you ask me right now, I think both end up making the Colts roster. But like you said, it's going to be hard at the end of that corner cuts to see who loses a job because I think there's going to be some shockers.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, Dustin, man, appreciate you coming on, giving some insight, talking about some fringe players that have to have a strong impression here in week number 1. Man, talk to us about some things that you're working on right now, where people can find you, your work, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to finally get the call up, and I am now full-time covering the Colts for A to Z Sports as a Colts beat writer. That's what I'm doing day in, day out now. So A to Z Sports, for any of my content, you'll see all of my written work. And then, obviously, if you want to see all of my awful tweets, at the Destin Adams on Twitter /X, whatever you should call it. You say, I haven't seen the X logo added to the bottom of your thing yet. So
I forgot about that. Eventually we'll get there. But
hey, no, you do you, Cody. You fight the good
we
fight,
just keep
okay?
Twitter.
Yeah,
I'm always going
you
to call
fight
it
the good
Twitter, to
fight.
be honest. Yeah,
Hey,
exactly. So.
in all my articles, I put Twitter and then I put a parenthesis X.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you do. Just next to the little Twitter thing, you just put like a small X logo.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, Dustin, appreciate you, man. Good luck keeping on the new gig. Definitely excited for you and what all the opportunities you will get from that. So, man, just keep up the good work, man, and thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Yep. We'll see you, man.